The large silver ship moved slowly through the dark space, carrying a small group of humans toward a new world. Daniel looked out the window, his hands resting quietly on his knees. He was both excited and nervous. This was his first time traveling to another planet, and he did not know what to expect. The other envoys talked softly among themselves, going over the rules and details of the mission again and again. They had all trained for this, but the unknown always felt heavy. Daniel had never thought he would be chosen for such an important trip. Back on Earth, he lived a simple life and enjoyed quiet things like walking in the park or reading books. He was not the strongest or the smartest, but he had a way of talking to people that made them feel comfortable. Maybe that was why the leaders picked him. They needed someone who could listen and try to understand others, not just someone who could argue or make deals. The planet they were visiting was called Lyrithia. For many years, humans had dreamed of meeting life from other worlds. When they finally learned there was a whole community of alien civilizations, Earth wanted to join. The Lyrithian Empire was powerful and respected. People said their cities were beautiful and their culture was very old. But most of all, humans wanted peace and trade. They did not want to make enemies in space. When the ship landed, Daniel felt his heart beat faster. The landing area was bright and clean. Strange plants grew in rows along the edges, their leaves shining with colors he had never seen before. Tall figures waited for them at the end of the walkway. The Lyrithians had smooth, pale skin and hair that changed shades when the light touched it. Their clothes were simple but looked very fine, and they moved with a calm grace. The leader of the Lyrithian group stepped forward and spoke. The words came out smooth and gentle, but Daniel did not understand them. He waited for the small translator device in his ear to change the sounds into English. Soon he heard a friendly greeting and a welcome to their world. Daniel bowed a little, hoping it was the right thing to do. The leader smiled and motioned for them to follow. As they walked, Daniel tried to look at everything. The sky was a soft blue with two suns, and in the distance he could see the tall buildings of the Lyrithian capital. It was unlike any city. He knew the shapes were smooth and round, and many of the buildings seemed to glow. Lyrithians walked quietly, some of them stopping to look at the human visitors with interest. Inside the main hall, the humans were introduced one by one. When it was Daniel's turn, he stepped forward and tried to look calm. He gave his name and said he was honored to meet the people of Lyrithia. Someone announced the arrival of Princess Illyra. Everyone turned as she entered the room. She was tall and moved like she was floating. Her hair was a deep blue with streaks of silver, and her eyes were kind but strong. Princess Illyra stopped in front of Daniel. For a moment there was silence. Daniel remembered to bow again, not sure if he should say something more. Illyra gave him a gentle smile, then spoke in her own language. The translator quickly repeated her words. She said she was happy to meet someone who wanted to learn about Lyrithia. Daniel said he was grateful for her welcome. They moved to a long table where everyone could talk. The food looked different, but the smells were warm and good. The Lyrithians offered the humans special drinks made from their plants. Daniel took a small sip and found it sweet and cool. He watched as the others talked, some of them trying to joke, some asking careful questions. The Lyrithians answered, with quiet voices, never rushing. Daniel listened, wanting to understand what was important to them. During the meal, Princess Illyra asked Daniel about Earth. She wanted to know about the oceans, the forests, and the animals. Daniel did his best to explain, using simple words. He told her about the seasons, about birds flying south, about children playing in the snow. Illyra laughed softly when he described a dog wagging its tail. She said she hoped to see these things. One day, Daniel felt his nervousness start to fade. He realized Illyra was curious and friendly, not cold or distant like he had feared. After dinner, the group moved to a garden filled with glowing flowers. The air was cool and gentle music played somewhere in the distance. Daniel found himself standing beside Illyra. She looked up at the sky, then pointed to the moons. She explained their names and said people often made wishes when both moons were full. Daniel told her about wishing on shooting stars back home. They smiled at the small ways their worlds were different, but the same dot as the evening went on. Daniel saw that Lyrithian customs were very different from human ones. When people wanted to show respect, they would kneel for a short time and touch the ground with one hand. It was not something they did for love or romance, but to show honor. Daniel watched and tried to remember what he saw. He did not want to make a mistake that could insult anyone. Later, Daniel returned to his room. He felt tired but hopeful. He wrote in his small notebook about everything he saw and felt. He wanted to remember the kindness in Elira's eyes and the gentle way she laughed. He wondered what would happen next. Would the humans and Lyrithians become friends? Could he do something that mattered? As he drifted off to sleep, Daniel thought about the adventure he had just begun. He did not know that his actions would soon change the future for both worlds. The next morning, the humans were invited to watch a Lyrithian ceremony. Daniel dressed in his best clothes and followed the others. The ceremony took place in a large, open area with colored stones set in patterns on the ground. The Lyrithians sang and moved in circles, their voices rising and falling. It was peaceful and beautiful. Elira saw Daniel watching and came to stand beside him. She explained the meaning of the songs, saying they were about hope and new beginnings. Daniel listened closely, wanting to remember every detail. When the ceremony was over, Elira led him to a quiet place by a small pond. She asked about his family and what made him want to come to space. Daniel said he wanted to help people find peace. He believed that even if people were different, they could learn from each other. Elira nodded and said she felt the same. Their talk was quiet, but something new began to grow between them. Daniel felt less afraid and more like himself. He wondered if it was possible to become friends with someone from a world so far away. Elira smiled and said she hoped they could spend more time together. Daniel agreed, feeling a spark of happiness. He had not expected Dot as the day ended. Daniel walked back to his room with a new sense of purpose. He thought about how small actions could mean a lot, and how meeting someone new could change everything. He did not know where this journey would lead, but for the first time he hoped it would be somewhere wonderful. The next morning, Daniel woke early, feeling a mixture of excitement and worry. The room he stayed in was simple but comfortable, with a soft bed and a window that looked out onto the glowing gardens of the Lyrithian palace. He took a deep breath and tried to remind himself that he was not just a visitor. He was here to help bring peace between two worlds. He joined the other humans in a large room where breakfast was served. The food was unlike anything from Earth, but Daniel found he enjoyed the bright fruits and warm breads. As they ate, one of the Lyrithian advisors, a woman named Sira, came to speak with them. She invited Daniel and the others to a cultural exchange event that afternoon. Daniel felt nervous, but he accepted the invitation. Later, Daniel was paired with Princess Elira for the event. He had not expected to see her again so soon, and when he met her in the main hall, he noticed how at ease she seemed compared to the day before. Elira greeted him with a small smile and told him she was glad he was the one to join her. Together they walked out into the city. Accompanied by a few quiet guards and Lyrithian aides, the capital city was even more beautiful up close. Buildings curved and flowed around parks filled with strange plants and gentle streams. The people moved calmly, dressed in light robes that changed color in the sunlight. Daniel noticed how everyone seemed to treat Elira with great respect, bowing slightly as she passed by. She returned their greetings with a friendly wave. Elira showed Daniel the market area, where traders offered goods from all over their world. She explained the uses of colorful stones, sweet-smelling oils, and woven cloth that shimmered in the air. Daniel listened closely, asking questions and trying new things when she offered them. He told her about earth markets, about fresh fruit, stands and farmers calling out their best prices. Elira laughed at his stories and asked if all humans were as curious as he was. As they walked, a few Lyrithian children ran up to see the visitors. They had never seen a human before and were curious. Elira introduced Daniel and he crouched down to say hello. The children asked many questions and Daniel tried his best to answer them. He showed them how to make a paper bird out of a small sheet he carried. The children clapped and laughed. and Illyra watched with delight. Daniel noticed that Illyra often explained things in her world with care, making sure he did not feel lost or confused. She told him about their music, their art, and the history of her family. Daniel talked about life on Earth, about growing up with brothers and sisters, about games played in summer rain, and about wishing for snow and winter. As they shared stories, Daniel and Illyra learned about each other's values. He realized that Lyrithians believed deeply in respect and tradition. Illyra spoke of how her family led by listening first and acting with kindness. Daniel felt that this was something his own leaders could learn from. Illyra, in turn, was interested in how humans could adapt and find joy even in difficult times. Sometimes, Daniel and Illyra misunderstood each other. Once, Daniel joked about getting lost in the city, but Illyra took his words seriously and worried he might not feel safe. Daniel quickly explained that he meant it in a playful way. She smiled in relief and promised to show him every corner so he would always know the way. Another time, Illyra described a special Lyrithian holiday, and Daniel thought it sounded sad, but it was actually a day of hope. They both laughed when they realized how words could change meaning between their worlds. During their time together, they visited a small art gallery. Paintings and sculptures filled the rooms, showing scenes from Lyrithian history. Daniel stopped at one painting that showed a person kneeling with a hand on the ground before the emperor. He asked Illyra about it, and she explained that kneeling in Lyrithia meant showing deep respect or asking for forgiveness. Daniel thought about how different this was from Earth, where people sometimes kneeled to propose love or ask for marriage. Illyra was surprised and asked more about human customs. Daniel told her how people on Earth would kneel on one knee to propose, and Illyra listened carefully, her eyes shining with interest. By midday, word of their walk together had already started to spread. Some of the human envoys watched from a distance, a few looking worried, but others smiling at Daniel's easy way with the princess. On the Lyrithian side, a few advisors whispered about how Illyra seemed happy and open when she was with Daniel. Some wondered if their growing friendship could help the mission, while others were afraid it might cause trouble when they returned to the palace. Illyra thanked Daniel for sharing his stories and time with her. She said she had never met someone from another world who made her feel so comfortable. Daniel felt his cheeks warm and thanked her for showing him her home. Before they parted, Illyra gave Daniel a small stone that changed color in the sunlight. She said it was a gift to remind him of Lyrithia. Daniel spent the rest of the afternoon with the human group. They prepared for meetings and discussed what they had learned. Some envoys asked Daniel about his time with the princess, joking with him and saying he was lucky. Daniel just smiled and did not say much, but inside he felt a new sense of hope and happiness. He kept the small stone close in his pocket. That evening, the humans and Lyrithians came together for a shared meal in the palace gardens. The tables were decorated with bright flowers and soft lights floated in the air. Daniel sat near Illyra, and they talked about the day. The food was a mix of Lyrithian and Earth dishes. Daniel tasted something sweet and found he liked it, while Illyra tried a piece of earth bread and said it was very different from what she knew. After dinner, there was music and dancing. The Lyrithians danced in slow, graceful circles, moving together in patterns that looked almost like the turning of the stars. Illyra asked Daniel if he wanted to join. He hesitated, but she smiled and offered her hand. Daniel followed her into the dance. He tried to copy the gentle steps and laughed. When he made mistakes, Illyra told him not to worry and just enjoy the moment. They moved together, and Daniel noticed how natural it felt to be by her side. As the night went on, Daniel and Illyra walked together in the garden. The moons were rising, painting the sky in silver and blue. Daniel asked Illyra about her dreams for the future. She said she hoped her people and humans could learn from each other and live in peace. Daniel agreed and said he believed kindness and understanding could change the world. Illyra looked at him for a long time and said she was glad he was here. They sat quietly for a while, listening to the gentle sounds of the night. Daniel felt a deep sense of peace. He wondered if he was starting to feel something more for Illyra, something beyond friendship. He did not know if it was possible for a human and an alien princess to become more than friends, but the idea made his heart beat faster. When it was time to say goodnight, Lyra smiled and thanked Daniel again for the day. Daniel thanked her too and said he hoped they would have more days like this. As he walked back to his room, he looked up at the sky and thought about all the things he had learned. He felt lucky to have met someone so special, and he wondered what would happen next. Daniel knew that something important was beginning, even if he did not yet understand what it was. Daniel woke up to the soft glow of the twin moons shining through his window. He felt both rested and hopeful, remembering the peaceful walk in the garden with Lyra the night before. He got dressed and joined the others for breakfast, but his thoughts kept drifting back to the Lyrithian princess and her gentle voice. The other human envoys noticed the change in him. He smiled more and seemed eager for the new day. The morning began with more meetings between the humans and the Lyrithian leaders. Daniel sat beside the head envoy, Mr. Carter, listening to the talks about trade and friendship. The conversation was polite, but sometimes tense. Some Lyrithian council members did not trust humans yet, and a few humans were still nervous about the strange customs and technology they saw around them. When the meeting ended, Lyra invited Daniel to join her for a walk by the river that ran through the city. Daniel agreed happily. As they walked, Lyra asked about his home and his dreams. Daniel spoke honestly, telling her about his family, his favorite park, and how he always hoped Earth could make new friends among the stars. Lyra listened quietly, her eyes kind and thoughtful. They stopped at a small bridge that arched over the clear blue water. Daniel noticed the way the light made Lyra's hair look almost silver. He wanted to say something special, but he was afraid he might sound foolish. Lyra sensed his worry and asked if something was on his mind. Daniel took a breath and decided to speak from his heart. He told her he felt happy when he was with her and that she made him feel welcome in a place that was so new. Lyra smiled, and for a moment they stood in comfortable silence, listening to the river. She said that meeting Daniel had changed her too. She admitted that she was nervous about humans at first, but Daniel's kindness and curiosity helped her see things differently. They promised to keep sharing stories and learning from each other. Later, they visited a quiet park filled with glowing flowers and soft grass. Lyra picked a small wildflower and handed it to Daniel. He thanked her and tucked it behind his ear, making her laugh. Daniel asked if Lyrithians ever gave gifts to show they cared. Lyra explained that gifts were rare but always chosen with deep meaning. Daniel said that on Earth, people often gave flowers to those they liked or admired. Lyra smiled and said she liked the idea. As the sun set, they joined a group of humans and Lyrithians for an evening meal. The mood was warm and friendly. People shared stories, and for the first time, laughter filled the room. Daniel noticed how Lyra seemed relaxed and happy, and he felt proud to be part of the reason. He told a story about his brother's birthday party on Earth, making everyone laugh when he explained how the family dog had stolen the cake after dinner. Lyra and Daniel slipped away from the crowd. They walked along a quiet path lined with glowing stones. Daniel felt brave. He reached out and gently held Lyra's hand. She looked at him in surprise but did not pull away. Instead, she smiled and squeezed his hand softly. Daniel's heart beat faster. He knew this moment was special. They sat on a bench and watched the stars. Daniel asked Lyra what she wished for most. She said she wanted peace between their worlds and a future where everyone could learn from each other. Daniel agreed, saying he believed that hope and kindness could change anything. When it was time to say goodnight, Daniel thanked Lyra for her friendship and for teaching him about her world. Lyra thanked Daniel for showing her that humans could be honest and gentle. As Daniel walked back to his room, he felt lighter than ever. He knew his feelings for Lyra were growing stronger each day. The next day, Daniel joined the human team for more talks with the Lyrithian Council. The meetings were hard, and sometimes people disagreed. Daniel spoke up when others argued, reminding everyone that they were here to build trust. He used the simple lessons he had learned from Lyra: listening, patience, and honesty. Slowly, the talks started to go better. The Lyrithians noticed Daniel's respectful attitude and began to trust him more. That afternoon, Illyra sent a message asking Daniel to meet her in the royal gardens. When he arrived, she was waiting by a pool filled with shining blue fish. She smiled when she saw him. Daniel sat beside her, and they talked about the day. Illyra told him about the worries of her people and how some were afraid of change. Daniel listened and shared his own fears too. He said he worried about making a mistake that might hurt the new friendship between their worlds. Illyra reached out and touched Daniel's hand. She told him that even the smallest kindness could make a difference. She believed that together they could show both worlds how to trust and care for each other. Daniel felt his heart grow warm. He promised to do his best. In the evening there was a festival in the city. Lights floated above the streets and music played everywhere. Daniel joined Illyra in the crowd, and together they watched dancers perform stories from Lyrithian history. The city felt alive with hope. Daniel bought Illyra a treat from one of the market stalls. She laughed as she tried it, surprised by the sweet taste. As they walked, Daniel saw a group of Lyrithian children playing a game. He joined in, and soon Illyra was laughing with him as they ran and played. People watched and smiled, seeing the princess and the human envoy acting like old friends. Daniel realized how important these moments were, and he felt grateful. As the night ended, Daniel and Illyra found a quiet place to sit. Daniel looked at the wildflower she had given him, now tucked safely in his pocket. He told Illyra that it meant a lot to him because it came from her. Illyra smiled and said that in Lyrithian stories, giving a flower was a promise of friendship. Daniel walked back to his room under the light of the twin moons, thinking about Illyra and the strange, wonderful world he was learning to love. He did not know what the next day would bring, but he felt ready to face it, as long as Illyra was by his side while Daniel rested. The other humans talked about the changes they saw in the Lyrithians. People seemed more open, more willing to talk and share ideas. Mr. Carter said Daniel was making a difference. Daniel heard the words the next morning and felt proud, but he knew the real reason things were getting better was because of Illyra and the friendship growing between them. A new day began on Lyrithia. Daniel woke with hope in his heart, eager to see what adventures waited for him and Illyra. He looked out at the bright sky and promised himself he would do everything he could to bring their worlds together. Illyra led Daniel through a quiet corridor in the palace. The walls glowed with soft light, and the air smelled faintly of jasmine. Daniel felt a quiet excitement. Today was different. He could feel it in his heart. They entered a large hall with glass walls that looked out onto the gardens. In the center stood a simple wooden box on a low table. Illyra turned to Daniel and said, "I want to show you something important." She opened the box and carefully lifted out a small, folded cloth. It was woven with silver threads that caught the light. Illyra held it out. "This cloth holds our family seal," she said. "My ancestors used it when they made promises." Daniel took the cloth gently. He felt its smooth texture and saw the seal 3 waves and a bright star. Illyra explained that when a Lyrithian offered this cloth, it meant they would honor a promise with their life. Daniel's eyes widened. He tried to say something, but Illyra raised a hand and smiled. "This gift is for you," she said. "I want you to have it." Daniel felt his throat tighten. He did not know how to respond. He held the cloth carefully and looked at Illyra. He saw kind eyes and a small smile. Before he could speak, a quiet voice came from the doorway. An advisor named Sira stepped in. She bowed to Illyra, then to Daniel. "Your Highness," she said softly, "the council awaits your presence." Illyra nodded. She looked at Daniel and said, "I would like you to come with me." Daniel stood and followed Illyra and Sarah. They walked down steps into a large chamber. The council members sat in high chairs arranged in a circle. Their faces were calm but serious. Daniel bowed, remembering to kneel and touch the floor with one hand. The council leader, a tall figure named Torin, spoke first. "Princess Illyra," he said, "you have asked this council to witness an important request." Illyra stepped forward. She held the cloth in both hands and turned to face the council. "Honored leaders," she began, I stand before you to ask a question that no Lyrithian has asked before." Daniel stood beside her, his heart pounding. Illyra turned to Daniel. She spoke in her own language, and the translator echoed her words. "Daniel, will you accept this gift as a sign of promise between our worlds?" Daniel felt tears in his eyes. He looked at Illyra and then at the council. He understood what she was asking. He knelt down on one knee, as humans did when offering respect or love. He held up the cloth with one hand and touched the floor with the other. "I accept," Daniel said softly. "I promise to honor this gift and to do my best for both our peoples." The hall was silent. Daniel felt his breath catch. He looked at Illyra. She nodded with a bright smile. Torin and the other leaders watched closely. After a moment, Torin spoke. "The tradition holds that accepting this gift binds the promise." Torin paused. "But your manner is not Lyrithian." He looked at Daniel. "Yet there is power in sincere hearts." He turned to the other council members and said, "We honor this promise and accept this new bond between worlds." A murmur of agreement rose in the hall. Daniel rose to his feet, holding the cloth close to his chest. Illyra stood beside him, her eyes shining. The council leader gestured, and 2 guards brought cups of clear water. Illyra took one and offered the other to Daniel. "In Lyrithian custom," she said, "we drink as a sign of unity." Daniel nodded and drank a small sip. The water tasted pure and fresh. When they finished, Torin spoke again. "Let this day be remembered as the day our worlds came closer in friendship and promise." He raised his cup. The council members raised theirs. Illyra and Daniel lifted their cups together. They sipped again, and Daniel looked at Illyra and smiled. After the ceremony, people came forward to congratulate Daniel and Illyra. Some bowed deeply, others simply smiled. Daniel felt proud and happy. Illyra took his hand and led him outside into a sunlit courtyard. The air was warm, and the flowers around them glowed in soft colors. Illyra stopped at a carved stone fountain. "This place is special," she said. "It is where many important vows have been made." She turned to Daniel. "I want to thank you." Daniel looked at Illyra, his heart full. He gently touched her hand. "I did not do it alone," Daniel said. "You gave me strength. You taught me hope." Illyra smiled and stepped closer. She reached out and put the cloth around Daniel's shoulders like a shawl. She adjusted it so the family seal lay on his chest. "Now you are part of my story," she said softly. Daniel felt warmth and joy. He looked at Illyra's face and saw love in her eyes. He leaned forward and gently touched her cheek. Illyra closed her eyes and let him draw near. At that moment, Daniel thought of the first night when he feared he would make a mistake. Now, here in the light of Lyrithia, he felt at home. They walked hand in hand through the courtyard, sharing quiet words. Illyra told Daniel how proud she was of his courage. Daniel told her he was honored to stand by her side. They paused under an arch of glowing vines. Daniel dropped to one knee and held Illyra's hand. "Illyra," he began, his voice steady, "you have given me more than I can ever repay. You have shown me kindness and trust. I want to share my life with you, whatever the future may hold. Will you marry me?" Illyra's eyes widened, and she placed her free hand over her mouth in surprise. Tears shimmered in her eyes. Daniel held out a simple ring he had made from a metal band and a small Lyrithian gem he found in the gardens. He looked up at Illyra with hope. Illyra knelt beside him, closing the circle. She smiled through her tears and said, "Yes, Daniel, I will marry you." Daniel felt his heart soar. He moved forward and placed the ring on Illyra's finger. She stood and slipped the cloth from his shoulders to wrap it around both of them. They stood together, hand in hand, under the glowing vines and soft light of Lyrithia, their hearts joined. In promise, word of their proposal spread through the palace and into the city. People paused in their daily tasks to smile and whisper. The promise between Daniel and Illyra became a symbol of hope. News traveled to distant worlds, and the story of the human envoy and the Lyrithian princess became known as the day peace truly began. As night fell, Daniel and Illyra stood on a balcony overlooking the city. The twin moons shone bright, and the lights of the buildings glowed like stars on the ground. Daniel held Illyra close and they watched the world they had helped unite. They did not know what challenges awaited them, but together they knew they could face anything. In that moment, Daniel realized that love and promise were stronger than fear and doubt. And on Lyrathea, under the light of two moons, a new story of hope began for both their worlds. News of their engagement moved quickly through the palace and beyond. As soon as dawn came, couriers carried the story to every district in the city. Humans and Lyrathians alike spoke in hushed tones and whispered excitement. Many celebrated the promise between a human envoy and the princess. Some looked on with worry, fearing change and uncertainty. Inside the council hall, debates began anew. Some members praised the bond as a bridge between worlds. One elder said that love could heal old wounds and lead to peace. Others were more cautious. They worried that mixing traditions might cause unrest. A young council member stood and asked if they should delay any decisions until they fully understood what this union meant for their laws and customs. The council leader nodded and called for careful study. Meanwhile, human diplomats gathered in their meeting room. Some envoys cheered the news. They saw Daniel's proposal as proof that the mission could succeed. They believed the princess's acceptance showed Lyrathians were ready for friendship. Others felt uneasy. They worried Earth leaders might not accept such a close tie with an alien royal. They wondered if bigger politics would threaten their happiness. Daniel hardly slept. He woke before sunrise and paced in his room. He thought of Illyra standing under the vines, saying yes. He smiled at the memory. Still, worry filled him. He asked himself if this bond would bring joy or trouble. He remembered her words of hope and her gentle touch. He knew he loved her, but love alone could not solve political challenges. Later that morning, Daniel walked through the palace gardens to meet Illyra. The paths were lined with bright flowers that glowed in soft light. He found her near the fountain where they had first shared the cloth. She looked at him with concern and relief when she saw him. He took her hand and they sat on a stone bench. Lyra told Daniel she spent the night thinking about their future. She felt joy at their promise, but also felt the weight of her duty to her people. She worried the council might force her to break the bond. Daniel listened and squeezed her hand. He told her he believed their love could show both worlds that trust was possible. He promised to stand by her side. Lyra smiled at him, her eyes bright. She said she knew he was right, but that she needed to show her people she respected their laws. She planned to call a meeting and speak to the council herself. Daniel nodded, willing to help. He offered to join her before the council to talk about the promise and how they would honor traditions while starting something new that afternoon. Illyra and Daniel entered the council hall. Members sat waiting, their faces serious. Illyra stood before them and began to speak. She spoke of Daniel's kindness and bravery. She told them how their bond brought hope to many. Daniel watched as her voice grew strong. She asked the council to accept their promise and support their union as a symbol of peace. The room stayed quiet as they listened. When Illyra finished, Daniel stood and spoke softly. He thanked the council for their work and respect. He said he wanted to learn every Lyrathian custom and follow each rule. He promised to honor the cloth and all traditions tied to it. He spoke of Earth's eagerness to join the galaxy in friendship. He reminded them that true unity came from understanding and respect. The council members exchanged glances. Finally, Torrin spoke. He said Illyra and Daniel's words touched him. He praised their sincerity and called upon others to consider how this bond could benefit all. One by one, members voiced support. Some added conditions. Certain customs must be observed, certain ceremonies performed. Illyra and Daniel agreed to each condition willingly. The council's decision ended with applause. Daniel breathed a sigh of relief and lifted Illyra's hand. She smiled at him with pride and love. Outside the hall, crowds cheered. Humans and Lyrathians mingled, embracing the news. Wave after wave of excitement rolled through the city. In the days that followed, preparations began for the union ceremony. Craftsmen wove new garments that blended human and Lyrathian styles. Jewelers designed rings that carried symbols of both worlds. Daniel visited Earth traders in the city to bring small gifts from his home. Illyra oversaw the decorations in the palace courtyard, choosing flowers that glowed under moonlight. They also prepared for the questions that would come from Earth. Envoys planned to send messages back to their leaders, explaining the council's support. Daniel wrote letters to his family, telling them of his promise and urging them to come to Lyrithia when invited. Illyra learned Earth customs from her advisors, practicing simple words and gestures that would make humans feel welcomed. One evening, Daniel took Illyra to a quiet hill outside the city. They watched the twin moons rise together. Daniel realized how far they had come since his first arrival. He thanked Illyra for believing in him and for giving him strength. She thanked him for teaching her courage and hope. They stood together, hand in hand, under the moons, envisioning a future of unity. Back in the palace, not all voices were happy. A small group of traditionalists met in secret. They plotted to disrupt the ceremony, fearing that blending human and Lyrithian blood would weaken their heritage. They spoke of ancient prophecies and of keeping their world pure. Their fear grew into anger. One night, Daniel walked the halls when he heard a soft cry. He followed the sound to find Illyra paging through old scrolls in the library. She looked tired. Concern filled his eyes. She told him she worried about the secret group and what they might do. Daniel took her hands and promised to protect her and their promise. They spent the rest of the night reading together, finding stories of past challenges and how Lyrithians overcame them with unity. Daniel saw her worry ease as they talked. He knew their love could stand against fear. They left the library at dawn, ready to face whatever came next. The day of the ceremony arrived. The palace courtyard filled with people. Humans wore bright colors, Lyrithians wore glowing robes. Banners blended symbols of both worlds. Daniel stood at one end, Illyra at the other. Between them lay the cloth with the family seal, the rings, and the gifts from Earth. As the crowd fell silent, Daniel and Illyra stepped forward together. Their hearts beat in time. They spoke their vows, promising respect, love, and unity. Illyra placed the cloth on Daniel's shoulders again, and Daniel gave her a ring made from silver and earth emeralds. They exchanged rings, binding their promise. The crowd erupted in joy. Daniel held Illyra close as cheers rose around them. Even the cautious council members smiled and clapped. Daniel realized that their love had bridged two worlds and begun a new tradition. As the ceremony ended, Daniel whispered to Illyra that he loved her. She whispered back that she loved him. Under the twin moons, they held each other, knowing their promise would guide their worlds toward peace and friendship. The sun rose over Lyrithia on the morning after the grand ceremony. The palace courtyard lay quiet, with only a few servants arranging flowers and sweeping pathways. Daniel woke early, feeling excitement and nervousness for the days ahead. He dressed slowly, careful to honor both human and Lyrithian styles by wearing the woven cloth Illyra had given him over his shoulders. Daniel met Illyra in the palace gardens, where dew still clung to glowing petals. She greeted him with a soft smile. Together, they walked among the flowers, talking about the future. Illyra said she planned to visit human worlds soon and learn more about their customs. Daniel promised to show her Earth's wonders when she arrived. They spoke of their hopes, imagining two worlds meeting not as strangers but as friends, later. That day, the council reconvened to discuss the next steps. Daniel and Illyra entered the grand chamber hand in hand. Council members bowed respectfully. Torrhen spoke first, congratulating them on the successful promise and proposal. He proposed forming a joint council of humans and Lyrithians to oversee new trade agreements, cultural exchanges, and joint ceremonies. Illyra and Daniel both agreed, and the council members approved the plan with enthusiastic support. Over the next few weeks, humans and Lyrithians worked side by side. Human engineers studied Lyrithian architecture and helped strengthen the city's bridges. Lyrithian artists learned human painting styles and created murals depicting shared history. Daniel taught a group of Lyrithian children simple Earth games, while Illyra held classes for human diplomats on Lyrithian etiquette and language. Both worlds found joy in learning from each other. A parade marked the first day of the joint council. Daniel rode on a decorated float with Alira by his side. People lined the streets, waving cloths of both Earth and Lyrithian colors. Children sang songs in both languages, their voices rising in harmony. Daniel felt pride and happiness watching the crowd celebrate unity. Amid the celebrations, a small crisis emerged. A shipment of Earth food supplies had been delayed by space storms. Human envoys worried the Lyrithians would see it as a sign that humans could not be reliable partners. Daniel and Alira acted quickly. Alira invited the envoys and council members to a private garden meeting. Daniel explained the storms were unusual and that backup plans were in place. Alira assured everyone that she trusted Daniel and humans would soon deliver the supplies. Her words carried great weight. The council accepted the explanation and tension eased. As days passed, Daniel and Alira grew closer. They shared quiet moments watching sunsets over Lyrithia's seas. They explored hidden gardens under moonlight, whispering hopes and dreams. Daniel taught Alira how to laugh at human jokes, and Alira showed Daniel the power of thoughtful silence. One evening, Daniel surprised Alira with a small wooden box. Inside lay a simple earth bracelet made of woven fibers and earth gems. He told her it was a token of his love and promise. Alira smiled and placed it on her wrist, telling Daniel it would remind her of Earth's warmth. Meanwhile, the secret group of traditionalists grew restless. They met underground, planning to disrupt the next cultural exchange festival. They believed mixing traditions would erode Lyrithian identity. Their leader, an elder named Orwin, gathered a few followers and planned to cut the power to the cities. Night lights during the festival, causing panic. On the day of the festival, Daniel and Alira stood in the palace high tower, looking down at the streets below. Lights floated above the crowds and music played in every corner. Alira squeezed Daniel's hand and whispered her worry that Orwin's group might act. Daniel nodded and slipped away to warn the palace guards. He found Captain Lyra and told her of the threat. She called her team, and they moved to secure the power stations. As night fell, the festival began without interruption. Lights shone bright, and dancers performed on floating stages. Crowds cheered and sang. Orwin's group realized their plan had failed. They tried to flee but were stopped by guards. Orwin was brought before the council. Alira stood with him and spoke gently about fear and the power of unity. Orwin listened and realized his anger was born from worry for his people. He apologized and asked to help instead of harm. The council forgave Orwin, and Alira invited him to join the joint council. As an advisor on tradition, Orwin accepted, moved by her kindness. His followers also joined, bringing new voices to the group. Daniel and Alira watched as smiles replaced anger. Another small victory for unity. In the weeks that followed, rulers from nearby systems heard of the human-Lyrithian bond. They sent envoys to observe and learn. Daniel led a group of human diplomats on tours of Lyrithian cities, showing how respect and promise could change hearts. Alira attended meetings on Earth to learn about human politics and culture. She found joy in simple things: rain falling on a garden, music sung in a crowded room, the feel of human hands in hers. Daniel and Alira planned their wedding ceremony, blending human and Lyrithian customs. They chose a hill overlooking the sea, where both moons would be full. They invited humans, Lyrithians, and aliens from nearby systems. Craftsmen wove a special cloth that combined both family seals. Jewelers created rings from metals from Earth. An LYRHIA on the day of the wedding, the sky glowed with pink and purple hues. Guests arrived from every world. Daniel stood at the altar, heart full of hope. Alira approached, radiant in a gown woven from earth silk and Lyrithian threads. They exchanged vows in both languages, promising love, respect, and unity. They exchanged the new cloth and rings, sealing their bond. When they kissed, a gentle breeze carried petals from flowers above. The crowd cheered and music rose. Daniel and Alira walked hand in hand down the hill, ready to begin their life together. After the ceremony, rulers and envoys spoke of the love they saw. Many said they would follow the human Lyrithian example. Daniel and Alira's story became a legend, a lesson in promise and hope. As they traveled between worlds, they shared their story, showing that honesty and kindness could build bridges stronger than fear. Years later, children on Earth learned of the human envoy who married an alien princess. Children on Lyrithia learned of the brave human who vowed to honor their traditions. Both worlds celebrated their anniversary each year under twin moons, remembering the day love and promise began a new age of peace.